I am Beardmohbox, and the 10-year simulation is by far my most popular thing I do on this channel, but I feel like the 10 years is a bit too far, and by the time we get to the end of the 10 years there's not very many players left, and that's kind of annoying just seeing a few rookies and a couple of second and third year guys. At least last year we had guys like Adrian Peterson still around. This year it wasn't that good, so I thought looking at 5 years might be a lot more interesting. So the way this is going to go, at the end of every season I'm going to be looking at the leaders in receiving, rushing, passing, stuff like that, and also looking at who won the Super Bowl, who retired, and notable free agent acquisitions and stuff like that. So I'm not going to be looking at every single player and every single team. So if there is someone in particular you want to see where they ended up after 5 years that isn't in the video, put it in the comments, and with that what I'll do is I'll do a roundup episode later on. So without further ado, let's simulate 5 years. So here we are at the end of the first year, and we're going to start with the Super Bowl winner. The Super Bowl was between the Bengals and the Seahawks, and it was the Cincinnati Bengals who won the Super Bowl 37-23. So we move on to the stats, where Philip Rivers was first in passing yards, Matt Ryan second, Roethlisberger third, Breeze fourth, and Andy Dalton fifth. On to rushing, where Marshawn Lynch led the league, 1,461 yards. Matt Forte with 1,408, and he now plays for the San Francisco 49ers. Doug Martin third with 1,385. Joseph Randle now with the Jaguars, 1,376. And Devontae Freeman, 5th position with 1,355. On to receiving, where Larry Fitzgerald led the league with 1,829 yards. DeAndre Hopkins 1,700, Antonio Brown in 3rd, Demaryius Thomas 1,500, and his teammate Emmanuel Sanders with 1,500 as well. Now let's have a look at who the league MVP was. As you can see, it was Russell Wilson, second in voting, Philip Rivers, and Coach of the Year Mike McCoy of the Chargers, leading them to a 13-3 record. Let's have a look at the AFC Offensive Player of the Year, Philip Rivers. Defensive Player of the Year, Lawrence Timmons, who also led the league in tackles. Offensive Rookie of the Year in the AFC was Carlos Williams. Defensive Rookie, Denzel Perryman of the Chargers. Moving on to the NFC, where Russell Wilson, the MVP, was the Offensive Player of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year was Bruce Carter. The NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year was Jameis Winston. Defensive Rookie of the Year, Stephon Anthony. Okay, so let's have a look at who retired. And Andrew Whitworth, the first guy here, Fred Jackson, Tony Romo of the Cowboys has retired, Frank Gore, Andre Johnson, and Adam Vinatieri, as well as Matt Hasselbeck, all of the Colts, all retired. Roddy White's retired, no surprise, Peyton Manning, Vince Wilfork, Shane Lechler, Matt Schaub and Steve Smith have retired, Sebastian Janikowski, Charles Woodson, Stephen Jackson, Tom Brady, Darren Sproles, Cameron Wake, Brent Grimes, Derek Johnson, Corey Redding, James Harrison, and the only head coach all the way at the bottom that's retired is Tom Coughlin. Kirk Cousins went over to the Texans, Matt Forte to the 49ers, Lamar Miller to the Ravens, Nick Fairley to the Titans, Haloti Ngata to the Bears, Terrence Knighton also to the Bears, Courtney Upshaw goes to the Cardinals. So let's have a look at the Super Bowl winner, and Super Bowl 51 was between the Vikings and the Patriots. And the Minnesota Vikings, led by Jay Gruden, win the Super Bowl in year 2. Now on to the stats, where Philip Rivers passes 5,000, this year 5,226, Aaron Rodgers second, also over 5,000, Matt Ryan third, Andy Dalton fourth, and Blake Bortles in 5th, 4,498 yards. Onto the rushing yards, where Le'Veon Bell gets 1,500 yards, Matt Forte 1,497, Lance Dunbar for the Broncos 1,441, Joseph Randle 1,432, and DeMarco Murray with the Eagles 1,361. Onto the receiving, Keenan Allen 1,658 receiving yards, Alshon Jeffrey in second, 1,632, DeAndre Hopkins back in the top 5, 1,500, Odell Beckham Jr. this year, first time in the top 5 in our simulation, 1,460, and Jordy Nelson coming off injury, 1,393 yards, secures him the 5th spot. And a look at the awards shows Russell Wilson has won league MVP again, that's 2 years in a row now. Coach of the Year is Demetrius Turner, the guy who took over for Tom Coughlin. Before I go into the NFC and AFC honours, a Rookie of the Year obviously is no longer relevant, as they will all be the made up drafted guys. So now it's just Offensive Player of the Year, who is Le'Veon Bell, who led the league in rushing, and Defensive Player of the Year, Brandon Marshall of the Broncos. The NFC Offensive Player of the Year, Aaron Rodgers, beating out Russell Wilson, and Defensive Player of the Year, Bobby Wagner. Now to look at the list of retiring players, and as I said, Gus Bradley retires, Evan Mathis, Anquan Boldin, Alan Branch, Jared Allen, DeMarcus Ware, Eli Manning, Adam Jones, John Coons retired, Julius Peppers retires, Benjamin Watson and Marquise Colston, as well as Zach Street. Antonio Gates, after 1 year with the Colts, retires. Darren McFadden also retiring. Danny Woodhead retiring. Kick return legend Devin Hester finally retires. Not too many crazy free agent signings this year, but the Chargers do bring back Drew Brees. He's on a 1 year contract there, and it looks like Phillip Rivers is going to be backing him up, despite Phillip Rivers leading the league in passing yards 2 years in a row. And here we are, the end of the third year, and the Super Bowl this year was between the Patriots and the Seahawks. And the Seahawks win 52-27 in Super Bowl 52. And there's some big changes on the way this year. And we start by looking at the stats. The leader this year, Andy Dalton, 4,900 yards. Matt Ryan in second. Derek Carr in third. Matt Stafford, now playing for the Browns, or will be playing for them next year, 4,671 yards. And then a made-up rookie in fifth position, Aaron Rodgers, below him. So we move on to the rushing yards, where Adrian Peterson now with the Panthers, 1,500 yards. Jamal Charles with the Broncos, 1,466 yards. CJ Anderson with the Cowboys, 1,400 yards. Theo Riddick with the Dolphins, 1,377 yards. And in fifth position, Duke Johnson Jr., 1,367 yards. First in receiving, we have Mike Evans, 1,593 yards. Second, Michael Crabtree, also with 1,500 yards. Calvin Johnson in third, 1,484 yards. Demaryius Thomas in fourth, 1,476, and Antonio Brown in fifth. Taking a look at the awards, Andy Dalton was the league MVP this year. Russell Wilson, second place, almost winning his third consecutive MVP. Coach of the Year, Ron Rivera of the Panthers. Offensive Player of the Year in the AFC is Andy Dalton. And Defensive Player of the Year, Lawrence Timmons of the Steelers. That's the second time he's won that in this simulation. In the NFC, Russell Wilson, Offensive Player of the Year, and Navarro Bowman of the 49ers, Defensive Player of the Year. And now let's have a look at who retired. Thomas Davis, Vincent Jackson, Richie Incognito, Zach Miller, Brendan Albert, Larry Fitzgerald, Justin Forsett, Terrell Suggs, Nick Mangold, Eric Weddle, Haloti Ngata, Ray McDonald, Donald Penn, Jay Cutler, Antonio Cromartie, Joe Mays, Trent Cole, Reggie Nelson, D'Angelo Hall, Carson Palmer to the Lions, Breeze to the Bears, Stafford to the Browns, Blake Bortles to the Rams, Doug Martin stays with the Buccaneers, but Jamal Charles heads to the Broncos, Jeremy Hill to the Chiefs, Devontae Freeman to the Bills, Adrian Peterson heads over to the Panthers, Brandon Marshall also to the Panthers, Julian Edelman signs with the Steelers, Allen Robinson heads over to the Seahawks, John Brown signs with the 49ers, and Brandon LaFell to the Cardinals, Deshaun Jackson back to the Eagles, Torrey Smith back to the Ravens, Eric Ebron signs with the Vikings, Delaney Walker stays with the Titans, Jason Witten heads over to the Bears, Vernon Davis goes to the Panthers, Michael Bennett heads to the Eagles, and Mario Williams heads to the Buccaneers. The biggest one here at cornerback, Josh Norman, is heading to the Bears. Sean Smith is on the move again, a third year in the row, to the Giants. And Kyle Fuller is off to the Rams. Ha Clinton Dix is headed to Seattle, Calvin Pryor to the Dolphins, and Kenny Vaccaro is off to the Redskins. A lot of strong safeties on the move, Barry Church to the Bills, and TJ Ward to the Bears. So at the end of year 4, the Bills, led by Johnny Manziel, are in the Super Bowl versus the Seahawks, and it's the Seahawks who win. They repeat for the first time. They won last year and they win again this year. Also, a quick mention, this one slipped under the radar somehow. Marshawn Lynch joined the Jaguars a couple of years back, I think. So maybe a bit of a quicker look at the stats here than usual. Aaron Rodgers first, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, AJ McCarron, and Teddy Bridgewater. Onto rushing, Le'Veon Bell leads the league again, Marshawn Lynch for the Jaguars in second, CJ Anderson, a made-up guy, and Carlos Williams. Onto receiving, Des Bryant leads the league, Calvin Johnson is second, Julian Edelman is third, Jordy Nelson fourth, and Eric Decker in fifth. League MVP this year is Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson is second again, and the Coach of the Year Mike McCarthy of the Packers. The Offensive Player of the Year Le'Veon Bell in the AFC, and Defensive Player Brian Cushing. The NFC's Offensive Player of the Year Russell Wilson, not the first time he's been that, and the Defensive Player Clay Matthews. Onto the retirees, and we have Jonathan Stewart, Gary Barnidge, Michael Bennett, Max Unger, Brian Orakpo, Reggie Bush, Alex Smith, Carson Palmer, Darrelle Revis, Matt Forte, Joe Staley, Aqib Talib, Drew Brees, Chris Long, Elvis Dumerville, Justin Tuck, CJ Spiller, Ted Ginn, Jake Long, AJ Hawk. So onto the free agents. Matt Barkley goes to the Titans, Marcus Mariota goes to the Redskins, and Brock Osweiler heads to the Jets, and Tannehill to the Broncos, Giovanni Bernard to the Vikings, Carlos Williams to the Chargers, Dion Lewis to the Titans, and Langford to the Seahawks. Oh, and Latavius Murray's off to the Lions. Mike Evans off to the Falcons, Golden Tate to the Eagles, Randall Cobb to the Jets, Eric Decker to the Eagles, Jordy Nelson to the Falcons, and Kevin White to the Buccaneers. Jimmy Graham joins the Titans, Kyle Rudolph joins the Falcons, and Delaney Walker heads to the Packers. Vernon Davis on the move again to the Ravens, and Jason Witten to the Browns. Geno Atkins heads to the Chargers, Terrence Knighton on the move again to the Raiders, Jarrell Casey's heading to the Bears, and Leonard Williams is moving to the Chargers. Stephon Anthony of the Saints is moving to the Eagles, Denzel Perryman of the Chargers to the Browns. KJ Wright's moving to the Dolphins, and Cliff Averill is headed to the Eagles. Josh Norman on the move again, this time going to Seattle, Kyle Fuller heading to the Chiefs, and Malcolm Butler is going to the Tennessee Titans. Free safety Adrian Amos to the Redskins, and Marcus Gilchrist to the 49ers. Alright, an interesting Super Bowl matchup here for Year 5, the Texans and Eagles in this Super Bowl, and the Houston Texans win their first Super Bowl, beating the Eagles 27-16. And a look at the stats for this season: a made-up guy first, Andy Dalton in second, Andrew Luck in third, a made-up guy in fourth, and another made-up guy in fifth. In rushing, we have a made-up guy first, CJ Anderson in second, Trey Mason in third, Theo Riddick in fourth, and another made-up guy in fifth. So for receiving, AJ Green leads the league for the first time in these 5 years, 1,600 yards, Randall Cobb in second, Michael Crabtree in third, and a made-up guy in fourth and fifth. League MVP 3 out of 5 times goes to Russell Wilson, with the Coach of the Year Mike McCarthy for a second year in a row. AFC Offensive Player of the Year Andrew Luck, and Defensive Player of the Year a made-up guy. NFC Offensive Player of the Year Russell Wilson, and Defensive Player of the Year Ray Mawaluga. Let's have a look at who retired. Jimmy Graham, Ryan Wendell, Chris Ivory, Deshaun Jackson, D'Amico Ryans, Jamal Charles, Matt Ryan, Ryan Matthews, Paul Posluszny, Brandon Marshall, Adrian Peterson, Ryan Khalil, Dan Williams, Mario Williams, Jermichael Finley, Mike Tolbert, Stevie Johnson, Marshawn Lynch, King Dunlap, Stephen Tulloch, Jarius Bird, Marshall Yander, Calvin Johnson, Michael Orr, Dante Whitner, Pierre Garcon, Sebastian Vollmer, Brandon Flowers, Joe Flacco, Victor Cruz, Tamba Hali, Joe Thomas, LeGarrette Blunt, Jason Witten, TJ Ward, Arian Foster, Chris Johnson, DeQuell Jackson, Mike Wallace, BJ Raji, Thomas Deku, and Akeem Jordan. So the Bears signed Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Daniels is now with the Browns, Vontae Davis to the Buccaneers, as well as Trey Waynes, Kiko Alonso to the Chargers, as well as DeMarco Murray, Derek Wolfe to the Falcons, Demarius Thomas to the Jaguars, Courtney Upshaw to the Jaguars as well, Carlos Dunlap as well, Raheem Moore to the Jets, Manti Te'o, Melvin Gordon to the Patriots, Janoris Jenkins, Alteron Werner, Dwayne Allen, Kelvin Benjamin to the Raiders, Greg Hardy, Nick Fairley, J.R. Sweezy, Kobe Fleener to the Saints, as well as Cecil Shorts, Jay Ajayi, Mike Iupati, Jordy Nelson to the Seahawks, Delaney Walker to the Steelers, Terrence Knighton to the Steelers, Rodney Hudson to the Titans, Doug Martin to the Titans. That does it with the 5-year simulation. I personally think this was much more interesting than the 10-year sim. That said, I will be doing a player career 10-year sim to see what happens, so look out for that next Wednesday.
Oh my god, play!
Hey, you made it to the end of the video! If you haven't seen the previous video yet, you can do that by clicking here. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, you can do that by clicking here and subscribing. New videos every Friday and Sunday, and sometimes Wednesdays too.